Give a nice warm Alaskan welcome to our keynote, Amy Gallimore.
Alaska, I simply have a simple question for you. The question is simply this: if you just happen to be here, why don't you say on the count of three? Ready? 1, 2, 3. If you believe that your involvement in student government can, you will make a difference in this world, why don't you say yeehaw on the count of three? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, it sounds nice. I like that. And if you believe that you can and will, and you are motivated, and downright dedicated, I want you to take your cute little flippers and throw them up in the air just like this. Some of you are like, what flippers? Yes, very good. Flippers, very good. And if you are motivated, downright dedicated, take those cute little flippers and clap them together on the count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of you are like, I don't know, I just have flippers and I'm so excited about it. I love it very much. One more time on the count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 4, 3. Yes, you don't even know. Very good. Super exciting. I think the cold has all gone to our brain. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so very much for having me. Some of you are like, she's the fastest talking Southerner I've ever met in my entire life. So let's slow it down and let's back it up for just a little bit to back when the earth was cooling and I was in the first grade. Miss Pat Markham's first grade classroom at Cottage Grove Elementary School, home of the Fighting Cardinals. Chirp. It was awesome. I went to school with 22 boys and 4 girls. Yeah. Meow. That's right. The odds were good, but the goods were odd. And it was great going to school there because here's the greatest thing about Cottage Grove Elementary School. Anytime anything happened, everybody got to attend. My great-grandfather went to school at Cottage Grove Elementary. My grandfather before him, my mother, my older sister, and even I went to school there. And it was an amazing place to go to school because it was career day. And when it was career day, everybody in the school got to attend. And we all went into the gymnasium, and there they were. There were doctors and lawyers and preachers and teachers, and all of these people paraded across the stage, and they all told us the exact same things. They told us that if we studied hard, if we worked hard, if we continued our education, if we set goals, if we wrote them down, if we talked about them, then we could indeed be anything that we wanted to be. And I was so excited. I could not wait to get home because I left career day knowing exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I could not wait. Because we lived on a large farm. It was about 1,000 acres of dark fire tobacco. And every day at 6 o'clock, it didn't make any difference what you were doing. Everything on the farm stopped, and we all sat down, and we all had dinner together. And at 6 o'clock, I knew exactly what was going to happen. We were going to all sit down together, and my daddy was going to ask me what I had learned that day at school. And at 6 o'clock, there we sat at dinner, and I could not wait because he was going to ask me. And finally, he got around to me, and he said, baby girl, he said, what'd you do at school today? And I said, oh, Daddy, we had career day. And he said, what'd you do? And I said, we learned about all the careers. And he said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, Daddy, I know exactly what I want to be when I grow up. And he said, what do you want to be when you grow up, baby girl? And I said, I want to be a fire truck. And then it happened. And you know what happens after that? When one child does something that's not quite right, ownership of that child transfers to the other parent. And my daddy looked at my mama and said, your child wants to be a fire truck. And my mother, in her sweet little mama voice, she said, well, honey, don't you mean like a doctor? And I said, no, fire truck. She said, don't you mean like a nurse or a fire truck? She said, don't you mean like a volunteer? Fire truck, old lady, fire truck. Now, I'd also eaten enough dinner with my parents. They were going to ask me the next questions, which were how or why, what are some things that you need to do? And so my mother, her sweet little mom voice, she said, well, honey, what do you think that you need to do to be a fire truck? Well, I had a 5-point plan. Fire truck, big, red, loud, fast, has a dog. And my mother quickly saw through my plan because mamas are smart like that. I had been begging my parents for a couple of years to get us a dog. And my mother had always said no. But I figured if I rolled it into a career choice, she could not deny me the right of owning my own puppy, or she would be a dream killer. My mother, again, I told you, she was very smart, and she said, Amy Elizabeth, she said, we are not getting a dog. Do you understand? No, crazy lady, I do not understand. My mother had not made any sense in many of years, and your parents are probably like this. My mother said things that did not make any sense whatsoever. Did I mention that we lived on about 1,000 acres of land, and she would say things like, if we got a dog, where would we put it? I'm thinking someplace here might be it's just a puppy. She would say things like, don't run with scissors, you'll poke your eye out. To which I'd say, technically, Mom, you can only poke your eye in, and she did not appreciate that at all. Really grumpy. I would say things like, I've lost my book, and she would say, well, where did you leave it last? Don't you get into that pool until you learn how to swim. And my personal favorite, if you break both of your legs, don't you come running to me. Not a problem, crazy lady. But I knew she was going to say that, and she said, Amy Elizabeth, that is the end of the discussion. You are not going to get a dog. But this time, it was not the end of the discussion. And at that point in time, I knew that the call had to be made. And I stood up this time very bravely and very calmly from the dinner table, which you were never supposed to do. And I stood up and I walked very calmly over to the telephone. Back in the day, phones were attached to the walls. They were so much easier to find, by the way. You knew right where they were when you left them. And I walked over to the phone and I put my hand out and she said, Amy, don't you do it. She said, don't you touch that phone. But I had to. The call had to be made. It was time, people. And I picked up that phone and I called my grandmama. Because I had figured out very early in life that I could not tell my mother what to do. Therefore, she could not tell her mother what to do. Therefore, you call your granny. My granny, who was determined that she would not be a dream killer, bought us a cat. Now, close to a dog, as it was four-legged and fuzzy, which was great. So she bought us a dog because she was going to help us learn what I used to call responsibility. So if we learned some responsibility, we could prove to our parents that we needed a dog. The problem with the cat was we called the cat Tom because we were creative children. So we had Tomcat who lived with us, but we learned later on that Tom was actually a cat of the night. It was actually a Tammy, and then turned into like 40 more cats, as they have a tendency to do, and we couldn't have all those cats, and so we got rid of the cats, and so we were sad about that. So the granny thought maybe we started out way too fast on that. So then she bought us a hamster. Four-legged and furry, a little bit smaller. The hamster we named Heidi. And then one day she did so well, we never saw that hamster again. We have no idea where that hamster went off to, and we were sad because we lost the hamster. Then they figured maybe we needed something that was more contained, so Granny bought us two fish, Vince and Gil. And so Vince Gill lived with us for a long time, and because we're good rednecks from Tennessee, they lived in mason jars. So my sister and I decided that if we treated Vince and Gil like dogs, and that you would do things that you would do with a dog, then that would, again, show responsibility. And so one day it was my sister's job to clean out Vince and Gil's mason jars. And so she has the attention span of a raccoon, so she put Vince and Gil on a towel while she cleaned out their, yeah, fish don't like to be dry. Who knew, right? That's horrible. So they died, and we were sad about that. So then we got Shelly the turtle. Now, Shelly the turtle lived with us also in the mason jars recently vacated by Vince and Gil. But again, we were going to show responsibility, so we would walk Shelly the turtle. If you've never done that activity, that's fun. And it looks something like this. So we had a little red string, and we would stand out in the yard, and we would walk Shelly the turtle. And so one day it was my turn to walk Shelly the turtle according to the chore chart. And so I went, and Shelly was gone. And so I went to my sister, and I said, Lori, and I said, it's my turn to walk Shelly. Where is she? And Lori said, I don't know. I lost her. How? And she said, true story, I don't know, she got away from me. So let me get this straight. Your story is going to be that you were outrun by a turtle. Like that's going to be our story with this. She's like, yes, it is. I'm like, perfect, very good. So somehow my sister lost Shelly in the yard with the big red string attached to it, and we were very sad. But later on that weekend, Mom was mowing the yard. She was, oh no. Wait, she's fine. We called her Chip. She was great after that. And so Mom just clipped her with the lawnmower. It was beautiful. It's a little red string. We're like, Shelly. And there she goes. She lived with us for a long time. She was totally fine with that. She had just a little nick, but it was a war wound, a battle cry after that, and she was totally fine. But I think my parents were very upset about us crying over our near misses and all of our mishaps with our animals. The final one they bought, though, was Charlie the goat. I don't know why they thought that a goat would be better than a turtle at that point in time. The goat, however, ate all the tires off the lawnmower and 2 sets of bed sheets off the clothesline. And the goat we gave, and he went to go live on a farm, which I really never understood. We never heard from that goat again, which was pretty sad about that. But finally one day, Mom and Dad brought home a bouncing baby Cocker Spaniel by the name of Brandy. Now, Brandy lived with our family for about 14 years and died of natural causes, not by the hand of my sister or I or the lawnmower, which we were very excited to say. But I will never forget the lessons of responsibility and learning to get what you want and setting a goal and learning to get it. Because another one of my parents' lessons, so not only all those things that everybody told me in career day, my parents were also very big on the lesson of you need to finish what you start. How many of your parents told you that? Finish what you start. Yeah, they said it a million times growing up. Not only do you set a goal, write it down, talk about it, continue your education, but you need to finish what you start. My sister, not to mention, has no attention span, but she is also an overachiever. When she started kindergarten, the end-all, be-all to your educational goal is to get your PhD. Doesn't necessarily need a PhD, but that is the end of your career in education, is to get what is called a terminal degree. What a horrible name for that, right? Terminal degree is your PhD, and a few years ago, she graduated with her PhD. And my parents were so excited, and my dad was like, your sister has a PhD. And I was like, yay. And he was like, are you going to call her Dr. Lori? And I said, well, I have a master's degree. Will she be calling me Master Amy? Which I think is a phenomenal plan, but the answer to that was no. And he said, well, don't you want to go back to school? And I said, well, I think that's just a fabulous idea. And he was like, that's great, baby girl. He said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I had never forgotten my dream of wanting to be a fire truck. For years, that's what I told people that I wanted to be when I grew up. If you went back and looked at the box of papers that your parents keep when it says, what does your child want to be? There are fire trucks written all over it. And I think my parents just hoped that I would eventually grow out of it. So there we are as an adult, and my father says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I just looked at him and smiled, and he just shook his head and said, you are your mother's child, and just walked away. And in all seriousness, he said, no, Daddy, I know exactly what I want to be when you grow up. And he said, what do you want to be, baby girl? And I said, Daddy, I want to be an auctioneer. He said, I don't know where you came from. And he just walked off. And I decided somewhere along the way that I needed to be an auctioneer. Now, the interesting thing about me wanting to be an auctioneer is simply this. I have never in my life been to an auction. Don't even own an eBay account. I don't even remember going to an auction, to tell you the honest truth. I do remember it being little, and somewhere in the back of my mind, and it must have been through the tobacco sales or estate sales or something, I remember hearing an auctioneer chant. That was somewhere stuck in my brain. And this is before Storage Wars and all those television shows became popular on TV. And I just remember hearing and thinking that was the coolest sound that I had ever heard in my entire life. And even though I was born and raised and have lived in the South my entire life and lived in Tennessee my entire life, I remember hearing that sound. And even though I'm from the South, I can speak at an incredibly high rate of speed. I don't know where I get that from, but apparently I have a lot to say in a short amount of time to say it, and I'm determined to get it all fit in. Now, and this will also shock you because I'm from the great state of Tennessee, but I can count. What? Yes. So I figured if I can talk fast and I can count, if I can marry those two things together, that would be a fun thing to be able to do, right? So I enrolled myself in auctioneer school. And again, my parents just shake their heads because I think secretly they were just excited that I forgot about being a fire truck. So I enrolled myself in auctioneer school. So let's talk for a moment about auctioneer school. Auctioneer school takes place in a town called Tullahoma, Tennessee. Tullahoma, Tennessee. There is an intentional trip to Tullahoma, Tennessee. You just don't swing through Tullahoma, Tennessee. The industry in Tullahoma, Tennessee, what they do for a living there is they shoot chickens, not just randomly, because that's weird. It's a bad day for a chicken. They shoot chickens out of wind tunnels into the air, to windshields of airplanes. I think they're dead. It's okay. To see at what point in time it will mess up the velocity or the wind pattern of an aircraft. It's a bad day for a chicken. It is. Yeah. That is what they do. That is their living. So I'm assuming they're dead because, again, that's a really bad day for a chicken. But that is what they do. They out of wind tunnels, chickens go flying into. And I will tell you, I fly about 200 days out of the year, but at no point in time has any Alaskan airline pilot or Southwest airline pilot ever come on the PA system and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, would you please buckle your seatbelt and put your tray table in the full and upright and locked position? We're experiencing some turbulence and possibly some chickens." No one has ever said that to me, so I'm confused by that, but I'm thankful for the job in which they do. But that is what they do in Tullahoma, Tennessee. So I enrolled in auctioneer school. When you enroll in auctioneer school, they send you a workbook and they send you a CD. And here's what they tell you, that if you practice 30 hours of your counting drills before you go to auctioneer school, then you will be successful. That is what the book says. You practice 30 hours before you attend the class, and you will be successful. It's written right there in black and white. 30 hours and you will be successful. My sister is not the only overachiever in the family. I practiced 60 hours before I went to school there. I popped in that CD. It didn't matter if I was in the car, if it was in the office, if I was in my home. Didn't matter where I was. I had it on my iPod, and I practiced counting for 60 hours. I would walk everywhere and count everything. Telephone poles, signs, road signs, stop signs, things in the supermarket, 5, 10, 15, 20, because you've got to be able to count forward just as fast and backwards just as fast. Have you ever tried to count backwards just as fast as you try to count forward? It's like saying the alphabet backwards just as fast as you do forward, and we think that we can do it because we're like, Z, elemental P, Y, elemental P. It's much more difficult than you think, but I was determined because that book guaranteed to me that if I did 30 hours of practice, I would be successful, and I was going to be successful. And the very first day, I walked into Tullahoma, and I sat down in auctioneer school determined that I was going to be successful because that is what it said. Before I sat down in the class, when I started with Tri Leadership Resources, next month is my 7-year anniversary speaking full-time. When I first started with Tri Leadership Resources, the CEO of the company handed me a worksheet that had 100 great goals on it. And he said, everybody in the company sets 100 great goals. I need you to write yours down. I wrote down my 100 great goals, and one of those things on my 100 great goals said that I wanted to be an auctioneer. Of course, it also says that I want to be a fire truck, but it also says that I wanted to be an auctioneer. I began to talk about it to the students. We talked about setting goals and setting SMART goals, and I would tell everybody that I spoke to how much that I wanted to be an auctioneer. I wrote it down and I talked about it. I started a blog about it. I would tell all of my Facebook followers, and I would tell all the people who followed me on Twitter that I was going to auctioneer school. I could not wait because everybody in Career Day also told me that. You write it down, you said it, you talk about it, then you can achieve it and it will happen for you. The book told me that I would be successful, and I was determined that it was going to happen. And there we sat in auctioneer school, and I sat down, and it was the first day, and the professor walked in. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nashville Auctioneer School." And he said, "Today, we're going to start class with an auction." It's the first auction I'd ever been to in my entire life. And he said, "We're going to auction off the prime parking space in Tullahoma, Tennessee. There's only one." And he said, the proceeds for this auction will go to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And he said, "We're going to start the bidding at $5. And then he started that auctioneer chant. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. I had never been to an auction, so I was so wrapped up in what he was doing, I completely forgot that we were actually auctioning off money. And he was like, "We'll start it off with a $5 bid." And $5 bid, now 5 now, who will give me 10 now, 10 now, who? And I was like, oh. And he was just counting and counting. I was like, that's the most awesome thing ever. And then he got around to me and he said, "Amy." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "A $45 bid." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Are you in or are you out?" I was like, well, that's just a good question, isn't it? Are you in or are you out? And he said, yeah. He said, $45 bid. He said, "Are you in or are you out?" Now, my brain does not work like an auctioneer brain. My brain works like a leadership brain. I'm like, that's the best question I've ever been asked. Are you in or are you out? I was like, well, let's just think about that for a second. Are you in or are you out? Are you involved in the organization, or are you just kind of on the outside of the organ? Like, are you involved, like you're an active participant, or are you just there kind of like just sucking up oxygen, like put that carbon dioxide? Like, are you involved to like chewing the pizza, like, blah, blah, blah? Or like, are you involved, like you're voting, like making things happen, like you're making a difference, right? Like, that is like your leadership sports question, right? Like, I did not choose the leadership life chose me. What? Like, that is your leadership moment, right? That's it. And you know your sports moment question. You know your sports moment. Even if you've never played sports before, you know your sports moment. Your sports moment is when you're in a gym or you're at home or whatever it is, and you've got the basketball, and that scenario runs through your head. And everybody does it, whether or not you play a sport or whatever. It's that moment that goes through your head, and you're like, there's no time left on the clock. If you make this one free throw, your school will win the state championship, and they've never won the championship before. Sorry. Everybody's chanting your name. Your parents are crying in the stands. Coach is wringing his hands. And if you make this for the first time in school history, are you in or are you out? I'm like, that is the greatest question ever. I'm like, if anybody ever asked me in a leadership situation, are you in or are you out? I'm like, I would be like, I'm all in. Like, I would be all freaked out, be like, woohoo, right? And so the professor looked at me and he said, Amy, are you in or are you out? I'm like, I am all in. He was like, awesome, sold for $50. I'm like, ooh. That was not what I wanted to do, but that's okay. So I bought a parking space for $50, but I kept thinking about that question. Are you in or are you out? I'm like, that's the best question I have ever been asked in my life. Like, are you fully, both feet, no holes barred, involved in your organization? Or are you just standing there thinking about it? Are you in or are you out? And I kept thinking about that all throughout the class, because going to auctioneer school, one, is a huge time commitment and a huge monetary commitment. And you better be committed to being in that classroom, or you're wasting a lot of time and a lot of money. That was the first day. The second day, sort of okay. By the time the third day rolled around, I knew we had some challenges. The third day, a man walked in the door. Every day we had a different tutor who would come in and help us with our auctioneer chant during the day, and we would learn about the business of auctioneering in the afternoons. And on the third day, a man walked through the door, and his name was Brian Knox. Brian Knox was the 2007 and 8 international bid calling champion. Now, if you think I'm all hopped up on Pixie Sticks and Red Bull, you need to meet this man. He walked through the door, and he was carrying a stick, and he was eating a pear, and he was talking, and there was just a lot happening with him. And I was like, I have not had enough coffee in the world to keep up with Brian Knox. And he was going to teach us to work on our auctioneer chant. He would call each one of us up to the front of the room, one at a time, and he would help us with our auctioneer chant. And so eventually he got around to me and he said, Miss Amy, come on up to the room and show us what you got. And I said, all right. And I did exactly what I know how to do. Because in the second grade, I came home from career day, and my dad said, what'd you learn at career day? And I said, Daddy, I know exactly what I want to do. And he said, yes, we know, fire truck. And I said, nope, got a new plan. I want to be a professional talker. He was like, oh, you are well on your way, my child. I was like, thank you, Daddy. And I knew in the second grade that I wanted to be a full-time motivational speaker. I'd seen somebody done it, thought that was the coolest thing ever. My parents enrolled me in 4-H, I had speech therapy, speech classes. I went to storytelling festivals, speech camp, didn't make any difference. I was involved in public speaking. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had been trained my entire life to hold a microphone. So when he called me to the front of the room, I knew exactly what to do. I walked to the podium, I grabbed the microphone, I got as close to the audience as I possibly could without it being just really awkward, and I said, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, today we're gonna have an auction, and he said, stop, and he said, what are you doing? I said, well, today we're gonna have a little auction. He said, no, he said, start again. I said, okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, today we're gonna have a little auction. He said, stop. He said, what are you doing? I said, we're gonna have a little auction. He said, no, he said, start again. I said, okay. I said, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to have a little auction. We're going to start. He said, stop. He said, what are you doing? I said, I am trying to have an auction. And he said, no. He said, you're doing it wrong. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, I started again. And I said, well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today and he said, stop. And I'm like, what is your damage, dude? I'm like, I'm trying to have a little auction here. And he said, you're going too slow. In my entire life, I don't think anybody's ever told me that I've talked too slow. And I said, okay. And then he told me that I was enunciating my words. I can't even spell the word enunciate. I didn't even know that I could enunciate. And I started and stopped about 15 times, and every time that he started and stopped, he would tell me that I was doing something wrong. From the way that I was holding my head, from the way that I was using my voice, to the way that I was holding my microphone, to where I was standing in the room, everything that I was doing was wrong. Auctioneers hold their head a different way. They hold their microphone a different way. They stand behind a podium. Without my heels on, I'm 4'11". If I stood behind a podium, it would be talking hair. There's nothing left for you to see but just the top of my head. How boring is that? This isn't a lot to look at, but this is less to look at, right? And everything I was doing was wrong. And then I learned quickly what that stick was for. And he went and got the stick. And I'm like, oh, Lord, he is going to beat me now with the stick. And the stick was for, he put me behind the podium and he said, start again. And he would take that stick, and every time that I tried to count by fives, he would take that stick and he would try to keep time, and you had to keep up with the rhythm as he was beating it against the podium. So now I'm trying to talk fast, count, and not get beat by sticks. There's a lot of stress now happening, and stand on my tippy toes at this point in time. Everything I knew at that point in time was wrong, and I was trying so hard to get it right, and everything that I did was wrong. And so finally he said, Amy, come out from behind the podium. And I crawled out from behind the podium, and he said, stand right here. And he got that stick again, and I was like, oh, Lordy, here it is, it's over. And he took that stick and he put it across my stomach, and he said, Amy, I need you to take a big, deep breath. He said, let it out. And he said, that was really good. He said, can you do it again? I said, well, I think I can. And he said, well, let's try it. I said, okay. And he said, take a big, deep breath. And he said, let it out. He goes, that was really good. You probably had that moment because he could see. You know how you have that glass and people are like, oh, is your glass half full or is your half glass empty? At that point in time, I was like, I don't know. Nobody ever gave me a glass. I mean, I was like, I had nothing left to offer this man. And so at this point in time, any compliment that he gave me, I was like, yes, breadcrumb, please. Thank you very much. And so he said, Amy, I bet you can do that one more time. And I said, I probably can. And he said, that's great. He said, big, deep breath in. He said, deep breath out. And he said, Amy, that was great. He said, you did a good job. You can go sit down. And I was like, I said, you see that? I was breathing 3 times. And I was so proud of myself for breathing. I did not know what to do. I've never been happier with myself for breathing at that point in time. And 14 other classmates got up there and did their thing, and I was so proud of myself for breathing. I did not know what to do, and I was like, I was breathing. I don't want to brag, totally breathed. And then at the end of the class, he went around and he told everybody a compliment. And he was like, Larry, great job on your 5s. Sue, good job on your 10s. Joe, way to count backwards. I think you're really getting the hang of it. And then he got around to me and he said, Amy. Now, if you are in the South, you can pretty much say negative things about people, but if you say the magic 3 words after it, it forgives you. And those 3 words are bless your heart. And he got around to me. Some of you know this, don't you? And he got around to me and he said, Amy, bless your heart. And for some reason, I just kept smiling because I didn't care, because I needed that compliment. And he said, Amy, bless your heart. He said, you are the best breather in the class. Nobody else in the class was a great breather, only me. Everybody else could count, but I was the only one that got complimented for breathing. And I was so excited. I wish you could have seen the smile on my face. I was like, thank you very much. I was like 3rd grade excited. I was like, that's such a great. And I had this huge smile on my face because honestly, I just needed that compliment. And I had this big old smile. And then all of a sudden, as he was talking about other things, my smile began to fade because then I realized he had said, bless your heart. And that's never a compliment surrounding any of that whole moment. But then I realized that really wasn't that wasn't a compliment. It's like when I came home in the 3rd grade and my report card said, Amy has a smart mouth. And I was like, Mom! Oh, no. Not a compliment, right? Wrong. So excited. Mom, that was quickly explained to me, not good. And then I realized the only thing that I am good at is keeping myself alive during class. My only skill, the only skill set that I have is the involuntary function of my lungs expanding and collapsing. That's all I can do. And that was the only thing that he could compliment me on, was the fact that I did not just pass out and die right there in class. No ambulance needed today. This one, she's a breather. Because here's the interesting thing about being a great breather. No one really compliments you on it until you stop doing it. Have you noticed it? I can see my funeral now, where here lies Amy. She was the best. Well, she was a good one, wasn't she? And I thought, this is day 3 of 12 days of class. I thought, what am I gonna do? Everybody else in this class has long surpassed me, and the only thing I can do, I hope I don't get a head cold, is keep myself alive during class. During lunch, everybody was going off to lunch, and I said, guys, I need to run an errand. I will catch up with you later. And I got in my vehicle, and I went down to the local Walgreens, the local drugstore. And I pulled my car up, and I went into Walgreens, and I purchased the largest, most aggressive bottle of Tums that I could possibly find. And I grabbed a 2-liter, which was just hot off the shelf. And I sat in my car, and for lunch, I had what I refer to as the antacid buffet. I just kept shoving Tums into my body, and I kept washing it down with hot Diet Coke. Now, I don't know if you've ever had that combination, but it's like Pop Rocks for old people. There was a foaming sensation that began to happen, and with the more you foam, then I began to cry. And if you foam and cry, and then you just can't stop yourself, and you just keep shoving more Tums in and trying to swallow it down, which produces more foam and then more crying. So I'm crying and foaming and then laughing, which makes you look like just an insane individual. Now let's amplify this by, is my car parked far away from the entrance? No. I'm parked just right there by the handicap spot. I'm like, laughter is my defense mechanism. So my first instinct to do anything is, of course, to laugh. Now, I am also a preacher's kid. Amen. And I am a carrier of a disease called the church giggles. And if you don't know what the church giggles are an infectious disease that happens when things should not be funny, but the carrier finds them funny. And it's usually set off by the very, very sweet elderly lady at church who sits in the same spot in the same pew every Sunday. And she carries the official church candy, which, as we all know, is butterscotch and hard peppermint. And do not sit in her place in the pew or she will cut you. She looks sweet, but that's her seat. She's like Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory. That's her spot, all right? And she will try every Sunday to unwrap that candy, and somehow it has adhered itself, and the more she tries to quietly unwrap it, the church giggler will find it funny. And the way that we alert you to know that it's time to start laughing in church is with the official sound, which begins like this. That then alerts the next person on the pew, which is the person who laughs without making sound, but they shake. That signals everybody on the pew, which then gets down to the official snorter and then sets it off. So laughter is my defense mechanism. How many of you, just out of curiosity, have ever been bounced out of a movie for laughing? Anybody? It's a safe environment. Perfect. True story. I was bounced out of a movie, and I'm telling you this because I'm about to start talking about my sister. I was bounced out of Titanic for laughing. It is not a comedy. Let's go back to my sister for a moment. My sister, 2 years older than I am, when the movie Titanic first came out, she asked me to go see it. Now, if you have not been alive in a history class or have never seen the movie or have no idea what I'm talking about, put your earmuffs up because I'm going to spoil it for you. The boat sinks. We know what's going to happen in this movie, right? My sister doesn't tell me one thing. First, she does not tell me that it is an 8-hour story about a boat sinking, nor does she tell me that it is a love story. 8-hour love story. Ain't nobody got time for that. So there we go, rolling up in the first time it came out in the theater. I go to purchase my $47 Coke, and they tell me it's a large Coke, and they tell me that if I finish it, I get free refills. And I'm like, challenge accepted. So, I figure I've got 8 hours, might as well see how much I can get out of this dollar, right? And so there we are, and it's 7.5 hours in, right? And finally the boat begins to sink. Now, I'm not making fun of the actual real story of what happens at Titanic. I'm making fun of the actual Hollywood version of it because we know what happens, and you know the part that I'm talking about where I'll lose my mind in it. The boat finally begins to sink, right? And my sister is nervous. I do not understand because we pretty much, if you see the movie poster, you know what's gonna happen. Like they've already spoiled it for you, right? She's nervous, and so everyone in the theater, as the boat begins to sink, is making the same sound. They're like, the only sound I'm able to produce is this. I'm now on Coke number 8. I'm chewing my own arm off. I'm right, and they get to the part where they are finally in the water. It is a good thing I'm a preacher's kid because I'm going to need a lot of help when I finally get to heaven. And they are in the water. Celine Dion, let's talk about her. Celine. Cue Celine Dion. The theater is just quiet. Near, far. I'm going to put your arm down, Celine. She's like, my heart will. Put your arm down, Celine. Your heart will go. And everybody's like on the edge of their seat. Right, here we go. Got this. And there they are in the water. Rose. Rose. Greedy. There's room for 2 on that raft. Rose. This is all mine. This is all mine, Jack. All mine right here. She got a big coat on. She's like, nope, 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 no. Just room for 1 up here. Don't even. And she's there, and it's so quiet. And my heart will go. I'll put your hand down, Celine. And there she is. And she says, Jack, I'll never let you go. Kerplop, off into the ocean. And I'm like, so laughter is my defense mechanism. So there I am sitting in my car, foaming at the mouth, hysterical. I cannot quit laughing. So I picked up the phone and thought maybe, why I thought this, I'll never know, but my sister will be able to help me. And I picked up the phone, and sometimes when I also get to laughing, I get talking fast, and I called my sister. I said, Sister, here I am. I said, I'm actually in Tullahoma, Tennessee. They actually shoot chickens out of windshields, which really obviously doesn't make any difference. The chickens are actually alive. They're not really dead, but they really make a chicken across the road. Tullahoma, Tennessee, but it didn't make any difference. So here I'm actually just going, I can't even count. And the guy was had the stickers eating a pear, and the pear didn't make a difference because I actually don't like pears anyway. They kind of like gritty apples. Make a difference. But here I'm trying to get out to him, and I tried to hang up, and he told me to stop, and I told me, and I was trying to breathe, and he told me I was a really good breather, and I thought it was a really good thing. But he told me to smile, and I was excited about it, and he told me it was a compliment. And I was like, oh my gosh, all I can do is keep breathing. And so everybody went to lunch, and I'm trying to eat tons, and said, eat tons, I don't even know what to do. And my sister said, Amy, you got to calm down. I said, I don't think I can calm down. Amy, you got to calm down. I said, I can't calm down. She goes, Amy, you got to calm down. Just count to 10. I said, oh, count to 10. I said, that is what I cannot do. And she said, Amy, you just got to calm down and breathe. And I said, well, I can do that. And she said, Amy, calm down. She goes, that is really a compliment. She goes, there are tons of great breathers out there. Really? Did any great speech that you've ever heard of start with, a great breather once said? I'm like, great breathers. And I said, I would love to hear of some great breather that you happen to know out there. She's like, no, there's tons of great breathers. I'm like, please, tell me a famous breather that you know. Silence. I was like, all right, doctor sister, lay one on me. She goes, oh, got one. Darth Vader. said, was he a great breather or just asthmatic? Like, we really don't, we don't really know. And I'm like, that is the best you've got? She's like, it's all I got, not a motivational speaker. I'm like, you're horrible at this. I just hung up on her. And then I sat there in the car and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then that moment happened. There's the defense mechanism of where things speed up really, really fast and I become hysterical and laughing and ugly cry and all those things set in. And then the world gets really quiet. And I think that is the moment when more people become more concerned about me, because when I get really calm and really thoughtful and very slow and really start thinking about what I'm trying to say, that's when the family begins to get concerned. And that's when I realized what was going on. Everybody at Career Day in the first grade told me. They told me if I studied hard, they told me that if I wrote down my goals, they told me that if I set my goals, if I talked about them, if I worked hard, if I continued my education, they told me that I could do and be anything that I wanted to be. They told me that. My parents agreed with that. My teachers have agreed with that. That book, that workbook they sent me told me that if I practiced 30 hours a week, that I would be successful. They told me that. I wrote it down. It's on my bulletin board. It's in my purse. It's on my phone. It's my 100 great goals. I started a blog about it. I've talked about it to people. I've told millions of people, hundreds of thousands of youth across the United States that one of my goals was to be an auctioneer. I did everything that they told me to do. And I realized right then in that moment, sitting in my vehicle at Walgreens, that it wasn't going to happen. I couldn't get it. I could not make my brain function and count as fast as it needed to count. And what I wasn't really willing to do, or what I didn't understand that I had to do, was that I had to walk into that class and not only learn to be an auctioneer, I had to unlearn everything that I knew to be right about being a professional speaker. Everything is the complete opposite of what I knew. I was not prepared to unlearn everything that I had been told that was right and true. And in that moment was the moment that I realized that I was going to fail. Big. Huge. Now, please don't get me wrong. I've failed many a time, kamikaze many a times. I've jumped out of the plane and thought, wait, this is not a parachute, this is a backpack. Woohoo, right? I have failed numerous times in my life, but this was the first time that I could honestly remember, one, it being so public. I mean, I was blogging every day, updating, posts, social media, that it was so public, and this is the first time that I could remember doing everything that they said by the book and not being able to succeed. And I am desperately, for the first time in my life, trying to figure out how to get out of it. And that is so against everything that I've been taught. Because I kept thinking about my mother's little lesson in my brain: finish what you start, finish what you start, finish what you start. How in the world was I going to get out of this? And at that moment in time, I knew the call had to be made. And I very calmly picked up my cell phone and I called my mom. And I very calmly, I said, Mom, I said, I just need you to know, I said, I have a little challenge. I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this. And she said, oh, hold on, let me get your dad on the other end of the line. I don't know why Dad can never answer the phone for himself, but Dad got on the other end of the line. And I very calmly and very methodically explained to my parents my concerns and how confused I was that I was doing everything they said that I should do to be successful, and it was not happening, and how doubtful I was that I was going to be able to do it, and how I didn't know if my brain was going to be able to retrain itself in a 2-week period of time, and how I really didn't know if this now was what I wanted to do. And then I processed all that good leadership stuff out. Like, is it worse to go through and to kind of fail, or is it better now to kind of cut your losses and to recognize this is not really a path that I want to go down, and to go back and to go to work and to do some other things that would be more beneficial with my time? And then my mother, in her sweet little mother voice, she simply said, Amy, she said, it doesn't matter if you fail, your dad and I will still love you. Oh, don't awe her. It never dawned on me they might not love me if I failed. And I was like, well, now there's some extra added pressure. I'm like, didn't realize that there was not love might not be. I'm like, everybody in my family is horrible at the motivational game. I'm like, I even talked to Laura. I said, the whole family stinks at motivation. I said, Mom, I need something motivating. I need something inspiring. I need something uplifting. And then I heard it happen. How many of you have parents who are also teachers? Yeah, you know what I'm about to talk about. My mother taught for about 36 years in the third grade classroom. I could not see my mother, obviously, but I could hear it. And she went from parent to teacher in about 3 seconds flat. I could feel her body language change. I could feel that foot point out, that hand on that hip, and that finger point. And all of a sudden, I heard teacher mom come out. And she said in a very plain voice, and I'm paraphrasing this for young ears, she said, Amy Elizabeth Gallimore, I'm about to give you something motivational. She said, you cannot live in your vehicle for the rest of the week. She said, you get your butt out of that vehicle, you march yourself down to that classroom, you sit your butt in that class, and you finish what you start. I don't want to hear another word about it. Click. My dad was like, I'll talk to you later, baby girl. I'm like, bye, Daddy. And I sat in that car, and I could just hear the ringing in my ears, and I thought, well, that was certainly motivational. Thank you, Mother, very much. And I was like, well, I don't really know what to do. And I thought, actually, I could live in my vehicle for the rest of my life. I'd be perfectly fine just living here in the Walgreens parking lot. That'd be totally fine with me. Because I love my vehicle, and I bought my vehicle for very specific reasons. And one is the first vehicle I really kind of purchased on my own that I actually researched and bought with intent. For specific reasons. One, I needed a large vehicle because I own a home, and so I needed to be able to haul things back and forth, and live on kind of some back roads, so it needed to be a 4x4 just in case it got stuck. And of course, it's a fast vehicle because I'm a girl driver, and we never go anywhere with the speed limit, and so big. It's loud because, it's a 4x4, so we like things that are loud in Tennessee. It's fast. And I have a bulldog, actually part bulldog, part pit bull, part German shepherd. Don't judge him, he's confused. He likes to ride, he thinks he can drive, but he doesn't have any thumbs, so he has to ride in the back. So he has to ride in kind of a little pup tent. It's got a dog. It's big, it's loud, it's fast, has a dog. And it's candy apple red, right? It's big, it's red, it's loud, it's fast, it has a dog. And in that moment, sitting in the Walgreens parking lot, I realized that I, Amy Gallimore, am a freaking fire truck. And if I can be a fire truck, by golly, surely I can be an auctioneer. And I drove my fire truck, head hanging out the window, siren and all, be-doo, be-doo. And I drove my fire truck back into my parking spot that I bought right out. And I went back into class, and I tried my hardest throughout the rest of auctioneer school. And at the end of auctioneer school, we had a live auction for St. Jude's, and we had a test, and we had to do the oral test. And he signed some piece of paper. I don't know what it was, but I grabbed it and I ran. I was never so excited to be out of a place in my entire life. And when I got back in that vehicle, I went all the way home, and on the way home, I picked up the phone, and I called my parents, and I said, Mama, I said, put Daddy on the phone. I said, a couple of things. Number one, I'm a fire truck. Just wanted you to know that. I said, number two, and I said, I want you to know that I never intend on finishing some of the things that I start again. And this time, it was my father who said, young lady, and there's a difference between, by the way, baby girl and young lady. He said, young lady, he said, you need to explain yourself. And I said, well, it's very simple. And I said, I think that there are some things in this world that you should strive to never finish. There are some things in this world that have a very easy stop and a start time, right? But there are some things in this world that I think that you should strive to never, ever finish. It will take me a lifetime to try to master being an auctioneer, right? But there are some things that I think that we start in this world that you should never, ever, ever want to finish. I had the opportunity to sit today and watch your session, and you guys are up here doing Partly Pro that I work with hundreds of student organizations, and I have never seen a group master the art of parliamentary procedure like you guys. Where's Ariel, who is doing her? We're going to vote on the amendment of the amendment to the amendment to the amendment to the amendment. And I was like, I'm just going to clap for that because I have no idea what just happened, but that was masterful, whatever that was. I have never seen, and I'm saying this with all honesty, I have never seen a group of students more skillfully master that whole process than you guys did this morning. That right there is a skill that will travel with you for your life. When what you do in trying to master that and learn that is not over when you leave today. The most important part of this room today is not right up here where the microphone is. The most important part of this room and this conference is the front doors, because those doors out there is where change occurs. If you want to make a difference, it doesn't end when you leave this conference. You get back on the plane and you make the 7 stops or whatever it is to get back to your place in Alaska, because I made about 14 in Alaska before I ever got where I needed to be here. But you go back to your student governments and you apply everything that you have learned. It doesn't end here. It does you no good to go to all the workshops and to the pods and the general assemblies and keep the information to yourself. You need to make sure that when you go back to your school that you make it a point to walk up to the teachers who allowed you to miss class, and you go to the school administrators who allowed you not to be in school, and you say, I just want to show you some of the things that we did. Because school administrators and the teachers and adults love to see that you are learning practical things that will help you as you get older. Because here's what I guarantee you. The adults that are in this room right here, the advisors, some of the advisors volunteered to do their job. Some of them got voluntold that they were going to do their job, right? Because sometimes a volunteer is somebody who doesn't fully understand the question, right? It's like, didn't quite get that. Sleeping on the where? Perfect, exactly. I'd love to sleep in the library. That would be awesome today, right? There is not one single teacher or administrator in this room, and they can prove me wrong, not one of them, when they were choosing a career path, not one single school administrator or teacher said, you know what, I would love to retire early and get rich quick, therefore I will be an educator. I doubt that that was said by any adult who is in this room, but I will guarantee you this. They do not do it for the income, but they do it for the outcome, and that is you. They are expecting that you are going to go out and that you are going to do great things, and I promise you this, and I don't make promises lightly, that if you surround yourself with great people, then you will do great things. And I also promise you this, that if you aspire to set goals, if you write them down, if you talk about them, if you continue your education, if you make a commitment to not always finish what you start and aspire to hang out with great people so you can do great things and continue to make change as soon as you leave this event, I promise that you will be amazed at some of the things that you will be able to learn. And 5 to the bit, 15 to 20, to 5 to 25 to 30, to bit about 30 to 5 to 35 to 40, bit about 40 to 40 to 5 to 45 to 50, to the bit about 15 to 5 to 50 to 60, 60 to the bit, 70 to 80 to 5 to 90, 95 to 100, 190 to 80 to 70, 50 to 50, 50 to the bit, 50 to 65 to 60 to 70, 80 to the bit, 80 to the bit, and 80 to 90 to 90, 100. 90, 80, 70, 60, 10, 10 to the bit about. He said, no, we got to go. Ladies and gentlemen, here is my question to you. Are you in or are you out? And I hope that you are all in, because I am all done. Thank you so much for your time and attention.